I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where there appears to be an escalation in the strategy by the Trump administration to fight back against drug cartels inside Venezuela. And that could include attacks on the ground following weeks of a military buildup in the region. Up to this point, U.S.-led attacks on so-called drug boats from Venezuela have taken place in international waters. The government of the Dominican Republic, which said it worked alongside the U.S. on a recent mission, later shared these pictures. It says show some of the more than 300 packages of cocaine recovered from the boat. Despite campaigning against foreign wars, President Trump has also sent a fleet of U.S. warships into the waters just off Venezuela. NBC News is reporting the U.S. is now preparing options for military strikes on drug targets inside Venezuela.
The administration striking Venezuelan territory would prove that the administration cares less about the sort of international law of this and more about getting after what they consider to be the head of a foreign terrorist organization.
The White House insisting their strategy overall is a matter of national security, also designating the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization, and speaking out against Nicolas Maduro, who much of the world views as a dictator who lost his election last year but remains in power.
We view the Maduro regime as illegitimate, and the president has clearly shown that he's willing to use any and all means necessary to stop the illegal trafficking of deadly drugs from the Venezuelan regime into the United States of America.
Venezuela responding by staging military drills, also accusing the U.S. government of trying to remove Maduro from power.
There is the criminal aggression that in the last decade has been waged against Venezuela to allow external powers to get their hands on Venezuela's natural resources and usher in a so-called regime change.
Now, according to reports, the strikes inside Venezuela could happen within the next several weeks and would primarily focus on drone strikes against drug trafficking group members and drug labs. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
You talk about Argentina and important in the Latin American. What is your plan for Venezuela? But is the terrorism, the narco-terrorism in the President Maduro? What is your plan about it?
Venezuela's done a couple of things very badly. Number one, we get drugs and all of that. But we get something in a way worse because they're a big purveyor of drugs, but we have worse. What they do very well is they send their criminals into the United States, and they send Tren de Aragua, that you know very well. You're from Venezuela, I assume. And they send them in by the thousands, literally. And these are the worst of all. And they empty their prisons into the United States. They empty their mental institutions into the United States. And because we had a president who's low IQ, he didn't realize what was going on. And the people that are high IQ that surround him, but they happen to be lunatics, radical left, they're highly intelligent, radical left lunatics, okay? So in a way, that's worse than having a guy like Biden. But they ran the show. You heard about the autopen. The person that really operated the autopen, but it was really the people that told the person that operated the autopen what to do. Those are the people that really were president, okay? So we're not going to stand for it in this country. And by the way, that autopen thing is under serious investigation. Just this, I don't think you care, because you're from Argentina, you couldn't care less about that. But I just want to say, because I do the weave, you know, the weave, cover a lot of different subjects. But the people that are involved in that autopen scam, because he barely signed anything. I mean, this guy, I don't know how you can be president. He barely signed it. But the only thing we can find for sure is that he signed Hunter's pardon, his pardon. Hunter's pardon, I like that. That's a good combination. So we're going to work very much with the president. We think he's going to win. He should win. And if he does win, we're going to be very helpful. And if he doesn't win, we're not going to waste our time, because you have somebody whose philosophy has no chance of making Argentina great again.
What's your advice?
This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin tonight with the Trump administration continuing to clamp down on the flow of illegal migrants and drugs from South American nations. Ryan Smith starts us off with the live desk with the president's new directive, Ryan, targeting Venezuela.
And here at the live desk tonight, Dee Dee, we start at the White House tonight, where President Trump now confirming He has authorized the CIA to engage in covert operations in Venezuela. Here's what he said in response to a question about that country's leader, Nicolas Maduro.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer?
Now, Trump signaled there could be military action to come on land inside Venezuela. This, of course, after the U.S. military has so far conducted a handful of deadly strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in recent weeks. It's an issue that has been dividing lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
He's the commander-in-chief. When he sees an invasion coming against the United States, he takes action. He's a leader. He should take that action. I support him 100%.
Congress should be having hearings. Literally right now. There's no reason we can't do it. And demand to know what the facts are.
In response to all of this, Maduro has ordered new military exercises, calling on his own citizens to step up and defend their communities. Earlier this month, he indicated he will declare a state of emergency in Venezuela over what he calls the threat of U.S. aggression.
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where the White House says we should expect to see more attacks on Venezuelan boats, which it says have been carrying illegal drugs to the United States. Plus, in an unusual move, President Trump made what are usually secret plans public, prompting a response from Venezuela. For months, U.S. troops and military ships have been making their way to the Caribbean, with growing signs it could mean an impending war with Venezuela in the name of stopping drugs from getting to U.S. shores.
We've almost totally stopped it by sea. Now we'll stop it by land.
President Trump Wednesday confirming this report in the New York Times that he authorized covert CIA action inside Venezuela.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela, and a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea.
One reason why President Trump says he also gave the green light to yet another strike on a boat he says was carrying drugs.
The president is taking these unprecedented steps, and it's making a real impact. We are seeing less boats with lots of drugs coming into the shores of the United States of America as a result of these successful strikes.
Others on Capitol Hill, though, calling for hearings, insisting the White House must legally provide more evidence there are actually drugs on board these boats.
I was a CIA officer and helped with targeting. I have no problem going after these cartels, but we've never had an instance where there's a secret list of what I understand to be dozens of now terrorist organizations that the American public and certainly the oversight committees don't get to know.
The Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro comparing Trump's actions to failed attempts at regime change in places like Afghanistan and Argentina.
Not war, just peace.
Also saying no to coups carried out by the CIA.
How long will CIA coups continue? Latin America does not want them, does not need them, and repudiates them.
Meanwhile, inside the United States, the White House immigration crackdown has continued in cities like Washington, D.C. and Chicago. This week, the Department of Homeland Security said Mexican cartels had put bounties on the heads of ICE and CBP agents, including $5,000 to $10,000 for kidnappings and $50,000 to kill them. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
Venezuela, President Trump has said Maduro doesn't want to mess with the United States, and this administration is continuing to position more military assets towards Venezuela. I'm wondering if the end goal of this narco-terrorist war is to implement a regime change in Venezuela.
The president has spoken on that, Reagan, and I certainly won't get ahead of him. What we've made very clear is that this administration is not going to tolerate international narco-terrorist organizations from trafficking drugs into the United States. And these cartels over time have grown more armed, well-organized, and violent. They have financial means, sophistication, and capabilities needed to operate in the way this administration has. And they have illegally caused the deaths of tens of thousands of American citizens each year. So that's where we are right now with respect to Venezuela, but also any country that is sending purposefully illegal narco-terrorists to the United States of America to bring illegal drugs. Why don't we go in the back?
The U.S. and Colombia relationship right now is at one of its lowest points in decades. We heard what President Gustavo Petro had to say about President Trump. We heard yesterday the response from President Trump. Is there any kind of compromises or gestures from the Colombian president that President Trump would like to see in order to de-escalate the tensions? Is it possible a de-escalation?
I don't think we're seeing de-escalation from the unhinged leader of Colombia right now, and I don't think the president, frankly, is interested in that at this point. He spoke on this yesterday, and I don't have anything to add to his comments.
I'm Atra El-Nashar in Washington. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela are rising quickly as both countries ramp up their military postures in or near Venezuela. The Trump administration says it's focused on counter-narcotics, but there are real questions about whether the U.S. will launch strikes inside the country. As America's growing military presence near Venezuela draws closer, Nicolas Maduro's government is mobilizing its own forces.
¡Despliega todo el personal!
Videos like this showing the beginning of what will be massive military exercises involving 200,000 troops in the air, land, and sea.
Nosotros seguiremos.
We will continue in our determination to prepare ourselves to defend our homeland in all areas. Whatever the threat, its intensity, its proportion, etc.
This came shortly after the U.S. military announced the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, with 4,000 sailors aboard, led by the world's largest aircraft carrier, entered Southern Command Tuesday.
On the U.S. side, it's plainly too large for a pure counter-narcotics operation. On Venezuela's side, I think the Maduro regime is sort of trying to simultaneously show resolve, but also not poke the bear too much.
The Pentagon says these forces will enhance and augment existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking and degrade and dismantle transnational criminal organizations. Since early September, on almost a weekly basis, the U.S. has carried out lethal strikes on boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific that the Trump administration says were transporting drugs to the United States. Like these two suspected drug boats hit Sunday. The Pentagon says 6 people were killed. On Tuesday, news broke that the United Kingdom is suspending sharing intelligence about suspected drug boats in the Caribbean with the United States.
The UK is potentially having concerns about the legality or the ethics, or the optics, for that matter, of U.S. strikes on drug boats.
The UK may also be concerned about what the Trump administration could do next.
They want to cooperate, but they don't want to be complicit, I think, in a regime change operation or in unilateral U.S. military attacks on Venezuela.
Colombia also halting its intelligence sharing with the U.S. Now, President Trump has maintained that regime change is not his goal, but he's also confirmed he authorized covert CIA operations inside Venezuela. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar.
President Trump says he is not ruling out sending U.S. ground troops into Venezuela. Trump making that comment while speaking in the Oval Office today amid his administration's crackdown on criminal networks tied to the country's leadership. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joining us. You were listening in, and Trump also said he isn't ruling out talking with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. What else are we learning tonight?
So tension between the U.S. and Venezuela only continues to grow. Aside from possibly sending in troops and also speaking with Maduro, the administration also announcing this weekend a Venezuelan cartel will now be designated as a foreign terrorist organization.
As tensions soar between the U.S. and Venezuela, President Trump hinting at possible military action from the Oval Office Monday, saying he isn't ruling out sending in troops on the ground.
I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela.
Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll telling Face the Nation, if the administration orders action in Venezuela, they'll be ready.
I can speak from the Army's perspective, which is we have a lot of training in that part of the world. We're reactivating our jungle school in Panama. We would be ready to act on whatever the President Secretary needed.
Trump's comments come just a day after the administration announced it will designate Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, a cartel the U.S. alleges is led by Maduro. Defense expert Rick Della Torre telling us this new designation legally allows the U.S. military to take action it wasn't able to before.
Carry out lethal strikes and against these organizations wherever they are, whether it's on international waters or within Venezuela.
Della Torre adding the military can now actively use the entire intelligence arm of the U.S. government in cooperation with the Department of War to follow up and carry out kinetic strikes.
What that means is the the United States government can now be on a war footing when it comes to terrorist organizations.
Since September, the U.S. has carried out at least 21 fatal boat strikes reportedly trafficking drugs in the waters off Central and South America, some allegedly linked to Venezuela and the Maduro government. The most recent happening this weekend, killing 3 people. Now, following the strike, Trump also suggesting Maduro is interested in talking.
We may be having some discussions with Maduro, and we'll see how that turns out. They would like to talk.
Now, the terrorist designation comes just a few months after the Treasury Department sanctioned the cartel, alleging it provided material support to Tren de Aragua and also the Sinaloa cartel. If no action is taken from Congress within the next 7 days, the designation will then take effect on November 24th. Reporting for the National News Desk, I'm Jeff Harris.
Multiple airlines canceling flights over the weekend after the FAA issued a new travel warning about flying to Venezuela. The FAA is urging airlines to exercise caution due to the potentially hazardous situation in that region, since the U.S. has significantly increased its military presence across the Caribbean as part of an expanded campaign targeting drug trafficking and, of course, narco-terrorist networks operating near Venezuela.
I'm Matt Gelka in Washington, where President Trump is reportedly still weighing all options when it comes to Venezuela, and now China and Russia may be involved. China and Russia are apparently still backing Venezuela and President Nicolas Maduro. During an episode of his weekly show, Maduro was presented with letters for his birthday from both Russian President Vladimir Putin and China's President Xi Jinping. Putin expressed unwavering solidarity, and Xi wrote, China reiterates its categorical rejection of external forces interfering in Venezuela's internal affairs. The letters seem to embolden Maduro.
However they do it, wherever they do it, they will not be able to defeat Venezuela. We are invincible.
Maduro brandished a sword in a separate rally this week, vowing to protect his country from U.S. threats. The letters also come as a top Russian general is reportedly in Venezuela training troops on tactics and drone use. Tensions are near a boiling point as the U.S. has beefed up its military presence in the Caribbean after a months-long campaign against alleged drug smugglers. The Trump administration has hit at least 20 boats they deem as narco-terrorists with deadly strikes, and they officially designated Maduro the leader of a foreign terrorist organization this week. The president says he still might be open to talking.
If we can save lives, if we can do things the easy way, that's fine. And if we have to do it the hard way, that's fine too. With Tren de Aragua and all the others that they sent in, the drug dealers, the drug lords, the people that they sent in, the jailbirds, they opened their jails and prisons and dumped them into the United States. And we're not happy about it.
The Trump administration believes the official terrorist designation gives it more military options as the president continues to mull over a potential land strike against Venezuela. It doesn't appear Venezuela came up during a conversation between Trump and China's Xi Jinping earlier this week. Trump praised extremely strong ties between the U.S. and China following the phone call and accepted an invite to Beijing in April. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Military move as President Trump's standoff with Nicolas Maduro deepens. Live look over the White House this morning. President Trump not backing down from his push to combat drug trafficking and remove Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power. And thanks for joining us. You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Jan Jeffcoat. It is Wednesday, December 10th. We want to get straight to Mark Boyle at the live desk. Mark, good morning to you. You know, this deployment of fighter jets to the Gulf of Venezuela follows months of heightened U.S. military activity in the region. So what are we learning about these flights?
Well, these flights, they've gone very close to the mainland, just a few yards away, actually, from the international space to the Venezuelan mainland. We're going to show you that track here in just a moment. In the past 24 hours, though, Jan, the U.S. military has deployed fighter jets to the Gulf of Venezuela, and this does mark the closest known approach of military aircraft to Venezuelan airspace. This is that screenshot that we can show you how close they got. Right here into the Gulf. This blue line indicates the flight tracker right into the Gulf, making a couple of laps right there, and then the plane takes off. About an hour or so is the time they've spent. Now, officials are calling this just a routine training mission. The latest move of the military here following the heightened activity is going to be something we'll see more of. The U.S. has flown B-52s, B-1 bombers very close to the coast of Venezuela as well.
We've cut down drugs 94% coming in from sea. And now we're going to do land, because the land is much easier and it's even more prevalent.
And here are the numbers. At least 87 people have been killed over the course of 22 airstrikes near the waters of Venezuela, like the one you see behind me. The Trump administration says a ground operation could be necessary to get rid of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. He's been accused by the White House of facilitating drug trafficking into the United States. We'll track this story for you here at the live desk.
President Trump has confirmed the U.S. seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Ryan Smith joining us at the live desk with how this military executed the operation as tensions escalated. Ryan?
Didi, few official details have been released so far tonight by Trump or the White House, but we have brand new video here just released by U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. It shows us the moment right here. U.S. military helicopters hovering over the tanker deck there, dropped in Coast Guard members executing that, quote, seizure warrant for the oil tanker known as the Skipper. Bondi stating on X tonight here, quote, for multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in illicit oil shipping networks supporting foreign terrorist organizations and has been used, she said, to transport oil from Venezuela to Iran. Now, this seizure here really ramping up the pressure on Venezuela's president tonight, Nicolas Maduro, as tensions continue to rise across that region.
Our message to the people of the United States remains the same. Peace. Peace above all else. No to crazy war. No to bloodshed for oil. No to war for oil, the recipe for eternal wars.
The Venezuelan government in response calling the seizure here an act of, quote, international piracy. When asked today about what will happen exactly to the oil aboard the tanker, President Trump responding from the Oval Office saying, quote, we keep it.
And just yesterday, the U.S. military flew 2 fighter jets over the Gulf of Venezuela in an effort to build up its presence in the region. A U.S. defense official said the jets conducted a routine training flight in the area and stayed in international airspace. The U.S. military has also launched 22 deadly strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats since September. The Trump administration claims the goal is to drive down the flow of drugs into America. Going by the numbers, a good amount of Americans say they are opposed to the U.S. military's campaign to strike boats in the Caribbean. In a new Reuters Ipsos poll, we've got the numbers here pulled up on your screen. About 48% of respondents say they oppose conducting the strikes. 34% say they support them, and 18% they are unsure or undecided. So far, at least 87 people have died in the strikes on alleged drug boats.
American force off the coast of Venezuela as the Coast Guard works with the FBI and Homeland Security to seize an oil tanker linked to Iranian terrorists. The latest escalation comes as the Trump administration ramps up pressure on Nicolas Maduro's narco-terror regime. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jan Jeffcoat. It is Thursday, December 11th, and right now you are watching the heart-pounding video of troops and agents there in action taking over that oil tanker near Venezuela. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the tanker had been used for years to support foreign terrorist organizations. We want to get right to Mark Boyle at the live desk following the latest. You know, you can't even believe it. You'd have to actually see it to understand it and believe it. But even when you do see it, it's still hard to believe. This does look like a movie. And the last time something like this happened, Mark, was more than 10 years ago. What have you learned about the operation? Well,
we're hearing from the president directly saying more like that is to come. Likely those tensions with Venezuela, Jan, certainly being taken up a notch this morning after the U.S. seized that oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. And here's what part of the messaging was from Attorney General Pam Bondi posting this on social media. It reads in part, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the U.S. Coast Guard, with support from the Department of War, executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. For multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in illicit oil shipping networks supporting foreign terrorist organizations. President Trump hinting to reporters in the past, more is to come.
And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
The president says the U.S. will keep all of that oil it seized. Officials say the ship was operating under a different name and had been put under sanctions by the Treasury Department back in 2022. They say the revenue used from it went to support Hezbollah and Iran's Revolutionary Guard Force. Now, this incident follows those fighter jets. We talked about this yesterday, making some loops there, and the military saying these were training flights. These flights flew very close to the Venezuela coast earlier this week.